We've been married for 3 years. My father-in-law, who was very kind to me, has passed away after being sick for a long time. He died peacefully with his family around him. I think we should invite Mom to come live with us, I said. Yeah, that's a good idea. Her legs and back have been giving her trouble. And since I work from home, I can help her a lot, my spouse agreed. So we decided to ask my mother-in-law to come live with us. My spouse told the family about our plan before the funeral. Why are you saying that? You just asked your mom for her savings of $2 million, didn't you? One family member said. Don't worry, we're going to take care of her and live with her, my spouse reassured. That's right, she wouldn't have to worry as much in her current home. Leave it to us, I added. Some of my sisters-in-law, seeming rushed and insistent, agreed to live with her. It's not about the money. You shouldn't think that way. Mom gets to decide, and I respect her choice. I replied to their accusations. When Liam asked, our mother-in-law bowed her head and said, Thank you. Your child is still small, so I'll stay at my current house, she said, meaning she'd rely on her daughter. I've never heard about any savings, I remarked, surprised by the sudden accusations. The couple acted like we were the bad guys for suggesting we live together without worrying about money. Maybe she's the one who wants to live together, Liam wondered aloud as we drove home. In the car ride back, Mia thought about this. I agree. I get that feeling too. We should check in on your mom when we have time, I suggested. After that, I visited her when I could and tried my best to look after her, hoping it would make Liam feel better. But within a few months, their attitude towards my mother-in-law changed a lot. One day, when I stopped by during a break from work, my sister-in-law was there. She grabbed the cake I brought as a gift and checked it. After she seemed satisfied, she suddenly told me to come inside. Oh, Amber, you're here to visit, my mother-in-law greeted. I got a cake you like. Please have some later. Thank you, I replied. I noticed she was wearing the same clothes as yesterday. If doing laundry is hard for you, I can take it home, wash it, and bring it back, I offered. Maybe you're struggling with housework because you're not feeling well physically, I suggested. I'm concerned because only their laundry is usually hung outside, and I'm worried she's losing weight. If she's eating 3 meals a day, this shouldn't be happening. I'm fine, Emma, thank you, my mother-in-law insisted, trying to avoid worry. But, I persisted, you keep coming every day. Sarah, my sister-in-law, interrupted me and looked at her own mother, as if she were something dirty. Sarah, you promised we'd take care of Mom, didn't you? I reminded her. So what? She snapped back. Exactly. At that time, she refused our offer because she said we'd take care of her. But what's really going on with my mother-in-law's situation? I wondered aloud. Because Mama's savings were used to buy a new car, so now she's a poor old woman with no money. Get it? You wanted to call her in, but it costs money now, so you don't want her anymore, Sarah accused, her tone accusatory. What the heck? Saying things like that, I exclaimed, feeling guilty for not taking my mother-in-law in earlier. She sat behind me, looking uncomfortable. She's your real mother. It's shocking that you can talk about money like this, especially after she spent her hard-earned savings. Please be careful with your words when you say you don't need her. Please think more about Mom, I urged. You're so annoying, Sarah grumbled, seeming unwilling to have a reasonable conversation. Not wanting to make things more uncomfortable, I called Liam to explain, and we decided to bring her to our house starting today. I quickly packed her things, got her into the car, and drove her to our house. My sister-in-law didn't seem to realize how insensitive she was being, and my mother-in-law was surprised by how quickly I acted. After that, our family of 4, including my mother-in-law, began living together. Emma, I'm sorry for being a burden, especially when your child is still young. And you have to take care of me too. My mother-in-law apologized. Why are you apologizing? Don't worry about it. We're family, right? I reassured her with a smile. She had always treated me well, like her own child, even though I came from an orphanage. Living with her made me feel happy and refreshed. I'm happy living with you, and it's my first time raising a child. There are many things I don't know, so I want you to teach me, she said, with a half smile. My husband is also happy with how things are going, and most importantly, my mother-in-law seems to be enjoying living with her grandchild. But despite this happiness, our financial situation as a couple wasn't great. We were cutting back on expenses and just getting by each day. Still, I was learning about saving money, and I didn't want to rely too much on it for happiness. But I had a dream. I've always wanted to open a cafe, so even when I was a student, I worked part-time at a popular cafe. However, bringing my mother-in-law into our home meant putting my dream on hold. I didn't want to give it up for my family, so I worked hard to save money, continued working from home, took care of my child, and managed daily household tasks. One day, about 6 months after my mother-in-law moved in, she called me in a serious tone. "Eva, please come here," she said. "Yes, what is it?" I asked as I approached. She handed me a thick envelope. "This is for your living expenses. Take it without saying anything." When I checked inside, I saw bundles of $100 bills. I was surprised. Wow, is this money? I've always been good at saving. I have a habit of keeping bundles of bills, she explained calmly. I couldn't believe it as I counted. There were several $1,000s. Indeed, when I counted, it was exactly $7,000, she confirmed with a smile. "I can't accept this much," I protested, trying to refuse, but she stopped me. "I'm sorry for testing you. I was planning to see how you manage finances for a year, but I don't need to worry anymore. By giving you more money for living expenses, I made you stick to strict saving habits. I didn't want to burden you anymore. Please accept it. I'll cover the living expenses. How about $2,000? She suggested. I stared at my mother-in-law, stunned. "Oh no, I don't need $2,000, but why so much money?" I was still a bit confused. She explained that she won the lottery and started studying popular investment strategies. It turned out to be profitable. She actually had $80,000 in savings in a bank account and invested in stocks through the bank. My sister-in-law, hoping to inherit money from her father, set up a fake $20,000 to test their financial responsibility. When she gave them $200,000 for their future expenses, they couldn't make it last even a week. Even my father-in-law, before he passed away, was aware of my sister-in-law and her husband's spending habits. He mentioned the possibility of cutting them off if they tried to take all his inheritance. My mother-in-law thought it might happen. "But you don't put money first," my mother-in-law continued. "I was surprised but really happy when you refused to take the money out. That's why I want you to accept it. And I also want to help you achieve your dream." My mother-in-law must have heard about my dream from my husband. But is it okay to accept her generosity? I wondered. After discussing it with my husband, we decided to save the money for the future. When I told my mother-in-law, she understood and agreed. A few days later, my sister-in-law and her husband showed up unexpectedly, demanding to move back in with my mother-in-law. Luckily, my husband was home that day, so he handled the situation, and they left without causing any trouble. But I couldn't shake my concern for them. When my mother-in-law saw them, she suggested that we set a specific day for their visits since they might come again soon. Eventually, they agreed, and they came on the agreed-upon day and time. As soon as they entered the house, my sister-in-law demanded, "Pack up quickly, we're going home right now," without even saying hello. But my mother-in-law calmly responded, "What I was waiting for was, we've been waiting for you. Please have a seat." "How dare you? Who are you?" My sister-in-law snapped. "I'm John, an attorney," a voice from the next room replied. It turned out that my mother-in-law had hired a lawyer. We were in the next room and could imagine my sister-in-law and her husband panicking as we heard the conversation. The lawyer explained their demands. "We won't give away any current assets. They must repay the entire $2,000 they spent, and they have to leave the home they are occupying now." "No way, ma'am. I'm your daughter. How can you cut ties like that when your own daughter is in trouble?" My sister-in-law countered loudly. "Please reconsider," my brother-in-law added, raising his voice, which was unusual for him. But my mother-in-law remained unfazed and spoke calmly. "If that's the case, then you've forgotten what you did to me. Do you remember? I'm an elderly woman with no money. You said you didn't need money because I didn't. Despite having debts, you used the living expenses I gave you to buy a new car. And now I hear that your debts have more than doubled. You don't know how to handle money. Don't borrow from others. Moving in with me was just an excuse because you couldn't afford rent. It's your own fault. Regarding my husband's inheritance, I'll also ask you to give up your rights. I won't help you in the future. Remember that." Unable to respond, my sister-in-law and her husband left quietly, feeling hopeless after hearing from the lawyer. Despite their daughters' and husband's refusal to leave, they eventually moved out of the family home, and now no one knows where they are. When I asked my mother-in-law if she regretted her decision despite being blood relatives, she replied firmly, "As a mother, sometimes you have to let your child stand on their own." I didn't ask any more questions. As time went on, the savings we had from our monthly living expenses grew. "You can use that money for yourselves," my mother-in-law told us. After discussing it with my husband, we decided to use it for a family trip we had been putting off and as capital to open the cafe we had always dreamed of. With my mother-in-law's support, we took a step toward our dream that we had been hesitant to pursue. Despite facing many challenges leading up to the opening, we managed to overcome them together. As the grand opening approached, my husband quit his job at the wholesale company to help me source materials for the cafe and speed up the preparations. We renovated the family home where my mother-in-law and father-in-law used to live, turning it into the cafe. It was important to my husband to preserve the atmosphere of the building as a place of cherished memories for my in-laws. Although it took time to prepare, the cafe quickly became a beloved spot in the community, offering people a place to relax. I was surprised when my sister-in-law and her husband visited the cafe once, but they seemed much more humble than before. It looked like they had truly changed. "Looks like those two still have some learning to do," my husband remarked with a sigh. Tears of joy filled my mother-in-law's eyes as the family home transformed into a cafe, preserving the memories she had with my father-in-law. She became more active in her rehabilitation, addressing her previously ailing legs and hips. When she felt confident in her physical condition, she put on the same apron as us and stood behind the counter, looking vibrant and alive. It felt as if my father-in-law, watching from the border of a photo, was smiling down at her.